I was just thinking that I'm like,
Past leadership and students.
You can keep coming in and going around the
Yeah, come on
other side.
here in front of the TV. I'll bet.
More room over here for you guys.
So I have to I'll do that. We'll say just because.
Sorry, I apologize.
hello everyone, it's now 7:30, so we'll call the meeting to order. I'll ask everyone to rise for the pledge.
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We are going to move right along to our recognition for the evening.
Good evening, everybody. It's so great to have so many of you here. In Lebanon, we grow learners, we cultivate leaders, and we create legacies. And tonight, for recognition, we have a lot of our student leaders here. This is an awesome opportunity for the community to be a part of this recognition. So Mrs. Scorso and Mr. Johnson were nice enough to put together a write-up describing what some of our learners did. I'm going to go ahead and read that. After we're done, we do have some certificates that I'll give to the principals, and we'd love to take a picture of this large group of students out in the hallway to more formally recognize your accomplishments. So first, we have the Connecticut Association of Schools Arts Festival and Connecticut Association of Schools Leadership Conference. Mrs. Schumann attended the CAS Festival with our families, and Mrs. Olson was the advisor for the Leadership Conference. Teddy Raymer, Hazel Huntington, Kai Raymond, Addison Howley, Sylvia Sonoa, Levi Ryan. Our CAS leadership students learned ways to be positive role models and communicators. They also met with Mrs. Scorso and made suggestions on how to make improvements in their school in elementary. They would like more vegetarian options for lunch, school-wide rules for the recess kickball game, and access to different spaces for winter recess other than just on the blacktop. At the CAS Arts Festival, Teddy Raymer, who plays the saxophone and has an excellent singing voice, and Tessa Bakai were recognized for visual arts. So if we could give all of them a round of applause. Could our elementary school students who were just recognized stand up? Thank you for being leaders at the elementary school. We appreciate it. And we will give you your certificate after we recognize the middle school students. You can have a seat. All right, our middle school students, Mr. Johnson is also proud to recognize the following students for representing LMS at the 2025 Middle Level CAS Leadership Conference on Friday, January 17th, which is a prestigious event for middle school students across Connecticut. The conference provided an incredible opportunity for young leaders to develop essential skills such as problem solving, communication, decision-making through interactive, hands-on lessons. Their participation reflected their leadership potential and commitment to personal growth. We're excited to see the impact of their experience in our school community. Congratulations goes to Victoria Curtin, Lily Huntington, Emily Lake, Audrey Rivera, Maggie Dugan, Elijah Jordan, Lillian Rondinone, Dante Sorensen, Balin Bastian, Aiden Patel, Anthony Valvo, Olivia Wilson. So we're at a middle level learners, is there anyone who would like to speak about their experience? Anyone want to take that next leadership step in front of this wonderful group of people? And talk
Asked
a
at
little
least
bit
6
more
of
about your
them, all
experience?
said no.
No takers. Olivia? Yeah, could the middle school students please stand to be recognized? And step forward. Right. Mr. Johnson, is the other group here?
At least one of the two is not.
Yeah, so
Did you see Noah around? I didn't see him walk.
So we also had a few learners who participated in something called Sticks and Stones. So on January 27th and 28th, the middle school held their second annual Sticks and Stones Assembly. Students learned about bullying and racism and how these things affect others and how to stop stereotypes, along with the importance of respecting and appreciating individual differences, how to take action when witnessing or experiencing bullying and racism, and how to identify and embrace positive role models. 2 students at LMS, Noah Mo and Amaya Sierra, spoke about their personal experiences with bullying and racism. Their willingness to speak out is important because it challenges injustice, supports those affected, and directly helps our school accomplish the goal of creating a more inclusive and respectful environment. These students showed courage by standing up for what is right in front of their peers, leading to positive change in our school. Thank you very much. All right, so at this time, I'm going to pass the certificates to your building principals who would go out in the hallway. If you could gather as a group, they can take a couple pictures of you, and we can continue the celebration by putting your pictures in our newsletters and on our websites. Congratulations. Fun things to
I used to be on the board of education. Have a nice, have a good night.
Absolutely.
Oh, you're stuffy. All right. I lost track of you. I just didn't.
So I'll just.
Oh, that's your son's.
No.
It's great for Noah. And I did. I don't know. All right, board members, we are ready to move on to communication.
Yeah, so we do have a letter of retirement.
Sherry.
Send me an invite. Yeah.
Sherry.
We have lunch.
So the letter of retirement is from Lebanon Elementary School special education teacher, June Dunn. June is writing to inform of her intent to retire at the end of this school year. She writes that she's thoroughly enjoyed her time here and feels fortunate to have the opportunity to teach so many wonderful children over the years. She says that she'll be forever thankful for what they have taught her and how they have inspired her. She's also extremely grateful for the chance to work with excellent staff and supportive administration. Thank you for everything you've done. This is done. We also have a letter of resignation from Michelle Millette, who was a paraeducator at the middle school. The position was just not a good fit in her estimation, so she made the decision to resign. But she does say thanks to everyone in LPS and comments that we have a wonderful district. The last communication is a resignation from Candace O'Sullivan, who was a part-time BCBA in our district, specifically at the elementary school. She says after much consideration, she's come to the decision to resign. She wants to thank us for the opportunity to work with Lebanon Public Schools and says that she enjoyed her time with the amazing staff at the elementary school. That's it.
Thank you very much. Next, we move on to public participation. In accordance with Board Bylaws 9011, we invite public participation. We have allotted a total of 30 minutes. Each community member is allowed 2 minutes. Ryan has agreed to keep time. As a reminder, this is for the purpose of the public to make comments and the board to receive those comments. We are not allowed to respond or engage with community members at this time. If the public comment is not based on an agenda item, we are not allowed to discuss it at all. If it is based on an agenda item, when that agenda item comes up, we as a board are allowed to discuss it amongst each other. So I see we have our first community member. Please make sure to state your full name and address.
My name is Bruce Califf, and I used to sit in one of these seats here.
Yes, we did.
I'm from Lebanon, Leonard Bridge Road. I want to thank all of you for your love of our students and for the time and energy to give them the best education that we can. But we must recognize that there are limits to how much money we are spending. When I first moved to town here, I went to the town budget presentation, and when I heard the figures of what the town's total budget was and how much of it was given to the Board of Ed, I was shocked. I wanted to say, there's an elephant in the room. It's a tribute to our town that we do spend 81% of our tax dollars on education, and that's commendable. While that is amazing, we need to come to the reality that there is a limit to how much we can and should spend. All areas of our town services are suffering because our school budget is out of balance. Just the other day, we heard from a former highway department employee who said, I worked in the town garage, which we were discussing, 50 years ago, and it needed work then. We have neglected our town's infrastructure in order to provide more and more for our school. As we look at the Board of Ed budget, the largest part of the budget is salaries and benefits. The reason for the large expense is small class sizes, means more teachers. As our enrollment went down by 35% over the past 10 years, we should have adjusted our staff accordingly. And this, I understand in the spring last year we had 30 resignations. We don't have to fire anyone, but instead we can make the changes gradually by not replacing all of those positions that have been vacated. Thank you very much.
Would you like to go next? Come on out. Make sure to state your full name and your address.
Eileen Weinsteiger, Goshen Hill Road.
Thank you.
So I've heard a lot of comments here and there and everywhere about the people who don't have kids in school anymore. And I really, it bothers me so much to hear that. I mean, I work at the senior center, and I last year had figured out what it took some of those seniors to pay back their kids' education, and it was about 50 years. So they're on that tail end. I'm an older parent, and I'm a younger parent. So I have 3 kids in a good span. I will be paying about 60 years of my oldest education, and it'll be closer to the 70, 75 years for my kids who just graduated 6 and 7 years ago. I just became a grandmother, and my son moved back to Lebanon. If the increase continues like it is, it will reach 100+ years for my granddaughter, if she decided to stay in Lebanon, to pay off possibly her kids' education. And I don't want to see that even for my son, who just moved back to Lebanon to support the town that he loves and grew up in. So even though I don't have kids now in the school, I am paying attention to what's happening here. And right now, I'm sorry, but my vote will be no right now.
Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you.
Would you like to go next? Please remember to say your full name and your address.
No problem. I'd like to preface it that due to my health conditions, if I get into a coughing jag, I am not contagious. It's just the nature of my disease process. My name is Matthew L. Smith. My wife and I have lived at 336 Babcock Rail Road for 30 years. I was on the Board of Education for 3 years, and I'm familiar with the shenanigans that go on with the budget process. The current budget increase is totally unacceptable. You need to stop and think about others in this community. Last year, my taxes went up over $700, and this year they'll go up another $700 if this budget proposal goes ahead. That would consume almost half of my Social Security check, which is unacceptable. I realize that our administrators and the teachers got a really nice raise last year, and that's great, but most of us did not. And it's unfortunate that at that point, that with all these increases, you're gonna force people to move out of town. People are moving out of state of Connecticut because it's too expensive to live in Connecticut. And it's because of the high cost of living. And if you wanna force people out of town, continue at this process. If you wanna make people come into town, lower the cost of education, lower the cost of living in the town, and people will move to the town. Currently, the United States is 40th in the world for education, yet we spent more per student than any other country. It's obvious that money does not equate to better education. And in fact, you always say that you're for the students as teachers. I find that difficult to believe because I was here during COVID, and every time that we tried to do something to progress the students to get them back into the classroom, we were stopped by the teachers' union. So that says a lot right there. I currently drive a 20-year-old automobile. Sure, I'd love a new automobile, but it's not in my
2
budget.
minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I want the people of the Republicans on the Board of Education to please vote this down.
Harold Nelson, Kingsley Road. First off, let me thank you all very much for your service on the board, straight out. There are some thankless tasks, there are some thankless jobs serving the public interest. Thank you. I also want to state that the security endeavors that you have put in place with the door locks, that's very laudable, and it's greatly appreciated that you're working towards keeping our student body safe and our teachers and our employees safe. So big thumbs up there. The budget. If it can't be a flat budget, which because of unfunded mandates and because of things that are coming down from the state, I strongly encourage you to leave it at the rate of inflation, which is currently 3%. The reason I ask for that is because it's an understandable number, and it's one that is in the news media, and the townspeople will understand. However, having said that, I do strongly, strongly encourage you to cut as low to zero as possible for an increase. Thank you again.
Harold? Anybody like to go next? Seeing none, we shall move on to,
I'll speak. Carl Weinsteiger, Goshen Hill Road, Lebanon, Connecticut. It's my first time in front of the board. Been in Lebanon quite a few years. Seen a lot of things, mostly tax and spend. Not a fan of it. Not a fan of any increase to the budget. But one thing I do notice is my first time here. I feel that boards elected by the people of the town should meet in what I would call a neutral space. So I don't, necessarily feel that the Board of Education should meet in a place where salaries are being drawn by the taxpayers of Connecticut and the town. So my proposal would be that the Board of Education would meet in a neutral place, maybe like the town hall, town complex building, or someplace that all parties were on equal ground. My vote will be no, and I hope that every Republican on this board will vote no.
Anybody like to go next? Yeah. Come on up.
Good evening. My name is John Noblet. I live on Camp Moline Road here in Lebanon. For myself and my wife, thank you for all the hard work you do, the hours you put in to try and benefit the children. At this time, I have no appetite for the budget as presented at this time. And the reason why I don't, I believe if you invest in a worthwhile cause, you should get results, positive results. I firmly believe that. And I think all of you firmly believe that. You're not here for your health. You're here to do the best for the children in Lebanon, okay? Well, the millions of dollars that have been spent in the school district, we have a situation where the learners in this town are at a very low proficiency rate, grade level in reading, language arts, and English. My sources by the state of Connecticut have a level they go by which they're feeling is the best they can do, 75%. That's what they're striving for across the entire state, 75%. That's a C if you're grading. Our kids in town, maybe some refuting there, but math proficiency is about 45 to 50%. That's on, if you take a look, 985 currently enrolled students, that leaves a lot of students in the lurch. Reading, language arts proficiency, somewhere in the neighborhood of around 55%. Again, it leaves a lot of students in the lurch.
Thank you, John. That was 2 minutes.
You're welcome. And I do hope that the Republicans on the board vote no on this budget as it stands.
Anybody else like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion, we approve said consent agenda.
I have to make a correction to the consent agenda. I'll do that now.
Will you second it and then make your?
I'll second it.
And then we'll have to be able to talk about it. What is the action,
Okay,
please?
for the facilities subcommittee meeting on January 14th, 2025, for the first item, which was the summer list, it states that the bleachers were repaired, and the correction is that was just an estimate was given for the bleachers to be repaired. So we just add that there's an estimate.
So motion on the floor to approve, seconded by Nicole, as amended. Acceptable. Thank you. Any other discussion? Motion by Brian, seconded by Nicole with the one correction. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to the student representative report.
Hi Holden, hi Cassidy.
We just have a report on the new ticketing policy here. Cassidy and I sent out a Google form, like we usually do, to all classes here at Lyman regarding our new ticketing policy for sporting events. One important question was if they knew about this policy or not. Over half of them said they already knew about it, and over almost 60% said they've already used it to get into sporting events. So that is good. I remember, I think it was our first meeting, we put out a Google form asking if they had attended, I can actually find it, but you know, if they were attending, you know, regular sporting events or not, or interacting with their peers, you know, extracurriculars, and that also had similar results. So it's good to see that this policy has reflected that in the same. A few, almost 20%, said they haven't, but they are planning on attending.
Another question we had asked was whether the students had used this policy to get in, and over half responded yes, that they have used this and that it has worked for them. And for the people that said they have not gone or have not been able to make it, said stuff that might possibly encourage them to go would be a mascot, cheer team, or just more like hype up to it in their own words. And then the last question we asked was if the students' parents were aware, and over half said no, while some said yes.
One thing we wanted to add real quick, Mr. Epicelli asked us to, I guess he couldn't fit it in before his report was due. Just real quick mention, Jenny Lopez and Kevin Botticello are the most recent members of our 1,000-point club here for Lyman basketball. Jenny's was last Monday and Kevin's was on Friday night. And that's a really big thing here. Big celebrations those 2 nights. It was a lot of fun to be at. Yeah, so that's just real quick. He couldn't get it in his report, but next meeting we'll have a report on AI in schools and student use. So that's all we've got today.
Thanks, Alderman Cassidy.
We'll move on to reports of committees. We'll start with Brian, policy.
So policy met tonight. 3 that we talked about, student nutrition and physical activity, budget process and transfers, and then sample policy for armed security officers. So the student nutrition and physical activity, there was a bunch, the admin did a review of that policy. There was a bunch of highlighted changes that needed added and changed. So that we agreed to, and we're going to bring forward to all of you guys for next month's first reading. The budget was primarily about the non-lapsing. We didn't have a specific, since that law changed, we didn't have a specific policy that really that spoke about the non-lapsing funds. So we looked through a couple of samples, and what we're going to propose for first reading next month is bringing, adding the non-lapsing to a new budget document to create one policy versus making multiple policies. So that'll be coming for first read. We're going to send that through, once it's all combined, send that through CABE and or Shipment and Goodwin to make sure that we're good there. And then lastly, as you all know, moved for a school resource officer to armed security officers. And we did not have a policy, so we looked through a couple of suggestions tonight. Brought several questions back to Superintendent Gonzalez. He's going to do some more follow-up on his end, and we're going to bring that back before the policy board next month, March. So we'll have 2 first reads next month, and then we'll have 2 first reads next month.
Any questions? None? No. Strategic plan on curriculum.
We did not meet, but we have a meeting next Tuesday at 4:30.
Thank you. Is it next Tuesday? Tuesday's the 18th. So it's
2
the.
weeks.
Sorry. No, that's okay.
We ain't there yet.
Rachel, finance.
We met 3 times. We met the 28th. I'm sorry, we only met twice. We were supposed to meet 3 times, but we had a snow day. So we met the 28th, where we just continued to go through the cuts of the proposed cuts for the budget, discuss some recommendations for the slide presentation. Then we met today. We went over the slide presentation, made some recommendations for that, what to, we recommend highlighting that would be informative. And then we, as a subcommittee, we unanimously recommended the 6.42 increase to the budget. Just to point out, 5.92% of that increase is contractual fixed costs. We also discussed the budget for the capital with a potential increase there, which we'll discuss later in the agenda.
Thank you. Sarah, superintendent evaluation.
Great. So Danelle and I met with the superintendent, had a successful meeting. Thank you for all your contributions for the mid-year evaluation. And that's it for our committee for a couple months.
Thank you. Dawn, safety and security.
I have no report.
Alexis, negotiations.
We did not meet.
Sherry, climate, culture, and enrollment.
We did not meet. My understanding was that the Finance Committee needed to meet several times, and it was requested that I don't call a meeting, so no report.
Thank you. Nicole, facilities.
Facilities met this evening. The first item on our agenda was the track. Originally, this project was supposed to be funded with town surplus funds, but they have since turned it back over to us. So we have placed it on our capital budget. The cost of this project is approximately $465,000, $840. Cape and Islands Company has been slated to do the work if approved. There were several options for this track. John Jarvis has stated that a polyurethane instead of a latex surface is better. With something called the BSS 100, which is permeable. This will have to be resurfaced every 6 to 7 years at a cost of approximately $150,000, as opposed to something that is not permeable, which would have to be resurfaced every 12 to 13 years, but it's more costly. So if this is approved, it can possibly be a summertime job. If not, it will have to go later on into the year. The next thing we talked about were maintenance updates, and so we schedule 2 walkthroughs of the buildings every year. One that takes place right before the schools open in August, and this next one, it will be on February 18th at 3 o'clock. We will start with LES, move on to LMS, and then end with Lyman. And these walkthroughs are open to any of the Board of Ed members, plus Board of Finance, plus Board of Selectmen.
Thank you. EastCon rep remains vacant. Let's move on to the administrators' reports. We have the administrator reports in our board packet starting on page 23. Would any administrator like to add to their reports?
Olin did a good job of finishing up mine. I couldn't add that in. It happened on Friday, so I had to turn it in on Friday.
Understandable. Any comments or questions from board members? Alexis.
I just wanted to congratulate LES on your 75% decrease in absenteeism. That's fantastic. And my question is on the LMS Smart Pass. I just was curious as to the feedback from staff and students, and you don't have to answer today, but and if it was maybe a possibility to be used at Lyman.
Possibility to be used.
At Lyman.
Oh, at Lyman. They are using it.
Oh, Lyman is using it. Okay, well, thank you for that.
They piloted it last year.
Oh, nice.
We piggybacked them this year.
Thank you.
The teachers love it. The students hate it. They're being held accountable to not be out of the classroom for things like bathroom and water break more than 3 times in a day. One of the greatest things from the administrative perspective is there's a dashboard that allows me to track total minutes of that students are spending out of class, That's good data to have. So it's good data tracking for me. It's holding students accountable. It's allowing teachers to see what's going on in other classrooms. It's allowing our hall monitors to make sure that kids that are out in the halls are there with the pass. Very effective and efficient system.
Great, thank you.
One of the other things it does too, it has something that it calls like encounter prevention. So we know like if there like are groups of kids that like to gather, we can put a block on them so that they can't all get a pass at the same time. And again, if two students are struggling relationship-wise, they're not getting along, we can put a block on them to make sure that they're not going to be out in the hallways at the same time. So that's been wonderful too. And it's, I can walk around with my phone, do the hall monitor, and I can see who's in the hall, and there's a countdown timer that counts down for their pass, but if they end up going over, it counts up so we can see how much time they've actually missed in class. It's been great.
Thank you.
I have a question. Mr. Johnson, will you be issuing another challenge this year to your students?
We will. We're starting to brainstorm some pretty scary ideas.
Scary for you, exciting for the kids. Any other comments, questions? All right. Or the superintendent.
Yeah, so I know there's been a little bit of conversation about town surplus and projects potentially for the future, but I do want to continue to update the board and the community, and once again, say how grateful we are for the opportunity to be able to use the town surplus for some of these much-needed projects. I'll start with technology. As a reminder, we ordered 56 Promethean panels, the smart boards for the classrooms, and 45 of those 56 have already been installed. And are currently being used. We have follow-up professional development that will be provided to the teachers. This is a technology that is utilized on a daily basis to enhance instruction. So we're happy that our teachers are supported in that way. We ordered 60 desktops to upgrade ones that were past their useful life with Windows 11 with a new setup and monitor, and 46 of those have already been imaged. So we are making great progress. I know that was a concern on the town side, and one that we echoed, that it was going to be hard to do with our small but mighty team, but thanks to a collaborative approach, we've been able to get a lot of this technology in, and it's being utilized. Chrome boxes for the elementary computer lab have been ordered, and we will be ordering laptops with the rest of the funds to replace the ones that are in excess of 10 years old. Any questions about the tech surplus update? We are not as far along with the access control. That one took a little bit more time in terms of getting vendors in for building walkthroughs, getting the estimates for installation. We also had to meet with the locksmith because there was some work that needed to be done on the doors prior to the access control system being installed. We have since selected the vendor. We have that finalized quote with the cloud-based monitoring for several years out, and it will still be under the amount that was given to us through the town surplus. So I think we've made a wise decision with the vendor and the services that will come along with their proposal, and it will definitely position our buildings to be safer places. So, thanks to the town, thanks to you for your support in that endeavor. Any questions about the access control? All right, so I guess I will segue to the budget presentation. I know there's been conversations to kind of kick off the meeting regarding the budget, which has not yet been presented. So it's great that we're actually going to be able to present the budget so that everybody can have an understanding on our board and in the community about where we currently stand. Then it will be the decision of the Board of Education to decide if they're going to vote to accept the superintendent proposal, then making it the Board of Education budget that will ultimately be presented to the Board of Finance later this month. So there are some similarities in this year's budget, and there are actually a lot of differences. My budget priorities will always be the same. I want to try to present with transparency to create trust. And in this particular budget, Martha and I, our business manager, have gone into much greater detail to break apart data that's reported to you as a Board of Ed and ultimately to the Board of Finance and to the town, so that everybody has the best possible understanding of a $22-23 million budget. So it's hard to put all that into one presentation, but we feel we've done a nice job being extremely transparent. The proposal that we're putting together is to provide the best for our learners. I think that, you know, as we are faced with this difficult task as a Board of Ed, and I know the Board of Finance and the town ultimately also have very difficult decisions deciding what they want to do, but one thing I've appreciated about Lebanon is we all kind of rally together and want what's best for our learners. We're going to continue to strive for excellence. There's been some data that we've shared during the year that shows that we have some pockets of real strengths, and we have areas that we need to grow. And in the budget proposal, we're asking for things that will help us strive for excellence. And we always have the lens of being as fiscally responsible as possible. And that's hard because running a school district, operating a school district is expensive. And we're going to highlight some of those increasing costs in this presentation. This is a reminder to all of you that you have a duty, a legislative requirement to provide adequate books, supplies, materials, equipment, staffing, facilities, technology, and equitably allocate those resources. Now, there's some subjective terms in there. You know, what is your interpretation of adequate? But you do have this legislative requirement as part of your voluntary role on the board. This is something that's also changed. The context of the budget, I have, for the past 3 years, had one of these bullets say that we are going to aim to maintain current staffing levels. Unfortunately, that is not the case this year. There are significant cuts to our staff across all 3 of the buildings, which I will outline. But there was no other way to come in at a number that was even close to fiscally responsible without making those cuts. We did try to align what we're asking for in the budget to our Board of Ed goal and to our LPS 2030 strategic plan. The current legislative requirements actually was a much smaller list this year, which was nice in terms of what we need to implement as a result of that legislation. Here's our mission, which you're all well aware of, so I'm going to move through that. As well, we've talked a lot about our new strategic plan during the course of the year. This slide, though, does highlight what our goals are within the strategic plan and what they correspond to in terms of related need. So if we want to offer college and career-oriented courses and programmings, then we need to have a robust program of studies. And in order to implement that robust program of studies, you need a certain level of staffing. You also want to provide small class sizes where appropriate to be able to dive deep into a very challenging curriculum. So that's just one example. And you all now have this most recent version of this budget presentation. I shared it this afternoon. You also have at your setting paper copy, and this is something that I will make available to the town if and when you make a decision on whether or not you want to approve it. So this is a good starting point. Our historical town-approved budgets, you can see over the last 5 years, the average percent increase that was ultimately moved forward and approved through the Board of Finance and the town has been a 2.74. And I will highlight that the past 2 years in particular have been higher than I can remember ever in Lebanon. And I'm thankful to the community, to the Board of Finance, the Board of Ed, for their support. Making the decision to go with a number at that increase is not easy. And I know that it was potentially hard on the townspeople, and that's, you know, when you go back to thinking about our Board of Ed goals specifically around the budget, it talks about balancing the needs of the schools with our community, and that's what we're always trying to do. Moving on, this is just a snippet of the email that was sent out from the Board of Finance that kind of shaped the context of where we are and what we're trying to do. We were asked to come in as close to current fiscal year spending levels as possible. That is a near impossible task. And I plan to highlight that in this presentation and also show what we did to try to accommodate this request. The next 5 to 6 slides are things that, just in case you haven't been listening closely on the news, and I admit I don't always listen to the news, there's not a bunch of positive things being shared, but there has been a significant amount of time dedicated to funding specifically in education, special education funding, and the impacts that it has within schools. In the governor's proposal, there's been conversation about incentivizing districts that are operating special education programs that are at a cost savings. So I just kind of threw some of those things in there with some of the representatives' feelings on how this should be supported at the state level and what we could be doing differently with the budget. There is a video clip in here from the Connecticut Association of Boards of Education, where one of their members is discussing some of the challenges with budgets. Just some survey data that shows that of 400 registered voters, 72% said that education funding should be prioritized in the state budget, and 53% said that they'd actually support tax increases along with that. This is the Connecticut Association of Board of Education legislative priorities. So they're looking to increase the ECS foundation and fully fund excess costs, and commit state funding to enable districts to support the need for counselors and mental health staff. The Connecticut Association of Public School Superintendent also has legislative proposal highlights, and they are very much the same. There's that alignment. Talked about the governor's legislative proposal and the support for special education in particular. This is something that's new and different, so I wanted to have its own slide. So we recently had our school resource officer retire, and we're thankful for Officer Solonsky's service. The school resource officer was supervised and monitored by the town through an MOU that they had. We have had conversations with the town about transitioning to a different model where we have armed security officers, which would have all of the same requirements and training, except they would not have arrest power. That would allow the responsibility for funding to come to the Board of Ed side, and then we would have direct supervision over that staff member. We've also talked about, in this potential shift, to change the model to have 2 armed security officers instead of 1 school resource officer, but using the same pot, for lack of better term, money. So this is monies that were already budgeted for this current year on the town side, and we would assume that if we didn't take on this responsibility with armed security officers, that the SRO model would still be funded on the town side. But that will have a 0.32% impact on our overall number, just something for you to remember. This is about Lebanon, only Lebanon. But it is interesting to know what's happening in other districts, because I, as a superintendent for one, would be even more concerned with proposing increase along the lines of what I'm bringing forth tonight if the proposal in Lebanon was the highest proposal in the state, highest proposal in the region. That's not the case. Now, these are at all different levels. Some have presented to the Board of Ed and been accepted. Some are just superintendent proposals, and this is only a small snippet. So now, if you had the entire Connecticut spreadsheet, you're going to find ones that are lower than this, but you're also going to find ones that are higher. I tried to grab ones that are regionally close to us and similar in size. 7.3, 6.9, 5.75, 5.46, 12, 8.7, 8.14. So when I saw our number and then looked at what's happening in other towns, it didn't make me feel any better. It just made me feel not alone. So now we start diving into some of the figures. So I have been a superintendent that has given directive to our administrative team and then to the teachers to say, ask for what you think you need. Don't shy away from asking for what you feel you need for our students. I don't want you to have a deficit mentality of we're not going to get it anyway, so we're not going to ask. So under my leadership, the requests have been greater. But I trust our teachers that what they're asking for, they need. I trust our administrators. That being said, when they brought their request that led to a 9.86% increase, I looked directly at our leadership team and I said, that's not going to happen. And I worked with Martha in the business department, and I started proposing cut after cut after cut to her, and she would give me a new figure every time I went down. I was able to get it to a 6.23% increase. And then, in the 2 weeks before I made the presentation, we had a change in special ed transportation. Mr. Jarvis was informed that we had mandatory sprinkler inspections that were another $50,000, and we had other salary considerations that bumped us up to a 6.42. That 6.23 was hard to get to, and there were some very difficult decisions, including staffing cuts that were proposed. I have not yet gone back and attempted to cut down that 6.42. So some bottom line statements here. Salaries, benefits, and other contractual fixed costs make up 5.92 of the overall 6.42%. Why I think so many other districts are in very similar positions to Lebanon is insurance. Our cap is at 11% increase. Just reminding you of some historical moves that we've made to save money, to be fiscally responsible. We were in the state partnership plan. The claim history was not good to Lebanon, but we were in this large group, so we had to take the rate increases they got. We moved into a small block where we had smaller districts who had similar claim histories, and we were able to save a significant amount of money. But in that small block, it was not sustainable. And our broker kind of told us that, like, hey, you're going to have to make a move. You can move now, or you can wait. We chose to move now with an understanding that our cap would be 11. It's proven to be a good move because those who didn't move, their rate increase cap is at 13, and some even higher. But that makes up 2.12% of a budget increase, 2.12% just to have health benefits for our staff. I went as far as to ask Martha, and this is not a realistic option. I want you to know that, but I also wanted you to know that our supplies and materials make up a very, very small amount of our budget. I asked Martha, I said, no supplies in any classroom. Now, all of those requests are cut. $350,000. Just over 1%. So here's just a bar graph that demonstrates a lot of what I was just telling you. So employee salaries and benefits, we got the, over $900,000. Other contractual fixed services, $400,000, etc. You could follow this along. And now I talked about some of the differences this year. In previous years, I gave this large number of money, and then I gave some graphs that showed it. This year, we went into much deeper detail so that you can have a more transparent understanding of what's really going on. Before I get to those deeper dives, here's some of the areas that were examined for potential savings. So we are at this point in the budget presentation proposing that there is an equivalent to 6 full-time positions being reduced. 3 regular education teaching positions, a special education teaching position, a paraeducator position, and a custodian. We are also in the 3rd year of our early retirement incentive that saved us money each of the past 3 years, which I'll show you on the next slide. And we have a significant reduction of requested services and supplies. So not only did I cut from the new requests that would have been above and beyond what we currently have, I cut departments and grade levels and individual teachers to pre-pandemic levels in many cases. So between those cuts, we have about $1 million that were taken off of the initial requests. Here's the voluntary early retirement incentive. So we had teachers who had been teaching 30, 34, 35 years, and we were extremely grateful for their service, but they were continuing to teach. And from a financial perspective, it wasn't helping the district. They were still doing a great job in the classroom, but we offered them an incentive to move into retirement. And each year it's had over $100,000 savings when you think about what their top step salary would have been versus their replacement. Budget drivers. Here's that big pie chart I've talked to you about. Blue is salary and benefits. Red, contractual fixed services and transportation costs. And then you have all of the other things. Instructional supplies, textbooks, workbook, technology, student-based activities. Here's the deeper dive that we've done. All right, so this just gets at the increase. When we look here, this is the total. So we're telling you that it's over $18.5 million for salaries. But what's most important for the budget proposal is what's the increase? So for certified staff, the increase was over $190,000. Other certified roles like stipends for coaching and advising was another almost $10,000. Non-certified staff, over $180,000. I say all those things, but they pale in comparison to the increase for health insurance. The health insurance increase was almost $500,000. That's more than increase in salary and benefits, salaries for all of those identified positions. I took it a step further so that you would know a breakdown of those salaries by bargaining unit, because some might say, well, why are we giving them that much money anyway? We operate under contracts in our bargaining units. So the administrators in this year are 3.25%. I know there's been comment about what the inflation percentage is. 3.25 for administrators. Teachers, towards the end of their contract, their percentages went down. They're a 2% increase. Our paraeducators did get a 4.5 in their most recent round of negotiations. Their salary or pay was under what is considered to be the minimum living wage salary in Connecticut. So we had to make an improvement there. Our custodians, a 2.5% increase. Secretaries were in a very similar position to our paraeducators to make their positions competitive regionally and to bring their living wage up. They got a 5%. The unaffiliateds are all different. We've recently gone through that, so I did not list them all. And the armed security officer is on there again, just to bring your attention to it. We went as far as to try to break down transportation and all other operation costs. So transportation, these are our contract with M&J to have our number of buses picking up and dropping off our students. It also includes some special education transportation for students who need specialized vehicles or who are outplaced in other facilities. And we're responsible for fueling those buses and paying for the gas for other vehicles and machinery in our district. Operations, we outlined our repair and maintenance of equipment in district, our repair and maintenance of the building. So we have MCOR as a service provider, comes out and looks at our boilers and our furnaces. That's just one example of all the other contracted services that are there. Our rentals, so that we can have a copier machine and printers in our schools. Our custodial supplies. Continuing on, postage, student insurance, dues and fees, etc. The one I will draw your attention to, tuition for outplaced students, is over $1.3 million. That's for students who we cannot provide that level of service in our district. I want you to try to hold on to that number, because we're going to have a whole breakout of the changing landscape in Lebanon and a specific snapshot on special education. But total operations is over $3.2 million. The district staff report. I've referenced the cuts we're planning to make. Here's a snapshot of our district staffing over the past 4 years. Number of administrators has stayed the same. The number of certified teachers has increased, and that is in direct relationship to the increase in special education. And I'm going to talk to you about something called maintenance of effort. It's something that we have to report to the federal government to maintain grant funding for many of these positions. Our paraeducator numbers have increased directly in line with the individual education plans. Our unaffiliated support staff has decreased. Our administrative assistant staff has stayed the same. Our nursing staff has stayed the same. Our custodial staff has stayed the same. The next couple slides just talk about where a lot of our current funding is going and where it will continue to go. We've added a school day pre-K classroom, which is a revenue generating program. We have a lot of professional development that is legislatively required that we are offering to our teachers. You'll remember all of the work we did around the early reading program. There's follow-up training that has to go there, around the phonics, around iReady mathematics. All of these things you should remember have been initiatives that were legislatively required in the past years and require follow-up professional development and funding. Some of the great things that are happening at the middle school with the AI tools and the acquisition of the grant from the State Department of Education. Some of the things that we talked about with SmartPass and a movement to digital 504s. And then at the high school, our new reading structure that has been provided by our English department. They've made extensive presentations around that. That's something that's on here. The 3D mapping program for the drone pilot course, if you remember a couple years back, that was a new program. So all of these great advancements that we've made need to continue to be funded. Enrollment is something that over the years I have dedicated a lot of time to. This year I chose not to. We just went through a school study as a town. You've been given updates on that ad nauseum. This is just a quick snapshot of the district projections that do show, according to SLAM, that over the next years we will see an uptick in enrollment, along with the summary. This does break out the number of students that are from out of district as part of our ASTI program. And that's a breakout of students in our regular ed setting who come from sending school districts who do not have high schools that we have agreements with. All of these are revenue generating numbers. Class size, you made a decision not long ago that you wanted to continue to support small class sizes in our district. That was something that was talked about through the school study in terms of their projections, and that was something that you as a board decided you would stand behind. Just an interesting data point, nationwide, class sizes in terms of student-teacher ratios have shrunk post-pandemic. So they're saying roughly about 16 students per teacher across the nation. And we've talked about how much we value this close-knit environment that we have in our schools that allows us to develop community and important relationships with our students and our families, and really allows us to address the social emotional needs of our students. We have an entire dedicated section to special education services. Keep this data point in mind. Across the state, the percentage of total population of students that are identified with special education needs moved from 11 to 17%. And just in that 6% increase, it had a 20 to 30% impact on overall budgeting. 6% of students accounting for 20 to 30% of overall budget. Here's maintenance of effort, and I'll be vulnerable to remind you and admit that I did not have a great understanding of this, and I've worked alongside Martha. And every proposed cut I was making, she'd say, Andy, don't forget about maintenance of effort. So maintenance of effort is a piece of federal legislation that says you must spend at least the same amount of funds for the education of children with disabilities on a year-to-year basis, except if these 4 situations happen. So if we have a voluntary departure of a special education teacher, we can then cut spending. So if, imagine every special education teacher in our district stayed on staff, but I wanted to make reductions in staffing, I could not touch special education because we would be out of line of the maintenance of effort and it would impact our federal funding. You saw earlier that I am making a recommendation to cut special education teachers. That is in line with the retirement that we receive. So that is a voluntary departure. I crossed the next one out. We have not had a decrease in enrollment of special education learners. I'll share the data with you shortly. And the last 2 are termination of costly programming or costly expenditures. So for example, Andy's a student in our district. He has some significant medically fragile situations that require an LPN to be with him or to have specific devices to help him get transported through the school. And then Andy and his family move. Well, we don't need to continue to have an LPN on staff. We don't need to continue to have specialized equipment if Andy has moved. So then we could reduce. But this is near impossible to predict, and I've said this to you before, we're kind of living this now. Our operating budget this year is in a challenging position because we had students move in that we did not budget for. So we can't, in the same token, anticipate people will move. First of all, they would not allow you to do that in the maintenance of effort, but it would be extremely risky because if they don't move, then how are you going to provide their services? So here's that slide that demonstrates the changing landscape in Lebanon. In the year 2020, we had 153 students who had individual education plans. This year, 188. 35 more students with identified special education needs. Students who also need accommodations through the 504 process has dramatically increased. But we have been able, in our district, to actually decrease the number of students that need to be outplaced because we have grown internal programming through creative thought processes in the People Service Department and collaboration and support from our building principals, and ultimately the execution of our teachers to have our SEALS program, our SCALES program, our PASS Academy. So we still have a $1.3 million tuition bill because there are students who still could not be successful to the extent we would want them to be in our district because we can't provide that level of service. So they do go to outplacement facilities, and the transportation for them is around $350,000. Here's a better snapshot to take a peek at it. So 14 outplacements at an average cost outplacement tuition of $95,000. Transportation, another $39,000. This is probably the most important data point and slide in the entire presentation. We have 28 students who would have otherwise potentially been outplaced that because of our internal programming are able to stay in their home district, which is important to us, it's important to their families, and we're proud to be able to do it. But just imagine for a minute that we didn't have those programs. That would be an additional $1.7 million of tuition, a potential $1 million of transportation. So the district has realized a savings of close to $2.8, $2.9 million by doing that. So again, here's that statement, 11% of the total population statewide has moved to 17%. We're seeing that too. And here's a further breakdown of the special education costs, salaries for staff, services and supplies, tuition and transportation. This year alone, the dollar amount increase was $342,000 just for our special education population. And our special education programming as a whole takes up 21.6% of our overall budget. Operating budget, now we're going to transition to capital. You've already approved in a previous meeting the capital request, but I do want to take a quick look at what our historical requests have been versus what our approved amount has been. There have been years where we have asked for a significant amount of money to try to do some much needed projects, and we are grateful for what we got, but it has proven to not be enough, and we're starting to see some of those results in the school study, and I know there's a lot of work that's still being done as a town in terms of the direction we'll go with that information, but that's for our facilities. Similar to capital, not as drastic a difference in the requested versus approved amount, and athletics on here. So the information technology amount at $65,000, I do want to point out, recently it's been closer to 100, 110 that we've been getting approved. We're not even asking for close to that amount because we are mindful that we just received a lot of money from the town surplus and we put that to work. So we don't need the 110 anymore. That surplus money helped us catch up. So we are in a better position now, so we can ask for less money. Athletics has been a $30,000 request. I've had difficult conversations with Mr. Elliott, who has a vision for where he'd like to take our athletic department, and had to tell him, no, this is not the year to ask for that. So we've come in at the $30,000 mark there. The facilities one is the one that does jump off the page as much different than the others. That is because we just added the 480, is it?
65.
465 for the track. So we had, I believe, approved something of 162,000, but we added the track in there. So that is something you will need to consider as well. So here we are with a slide that removes all of the other stepping stones and just gets you to the number that I'm proposing to you for your consideration tonight, which is a total percentage increase of 6.42%. And as a reminder, this is where that 6.42 comes from. 5.92% of that comes from salary and benefits, with 2.12 of that 5.92 just being insurance increase alone. Then we have a remaining, let's call it 0.5%. So not even 0.1% of the budget increase has to do with instructional supplies. Not barely over 0.1% for technology and equipment capital, and even less for student-based activities. So we have really kept this a bare bones, for lack of a better term, presentation, understanding the large increase that came with salary and benefits, and I have been considerate of that, and that's why this year, for the first time, under my leadership, I have proposed such a significant cut to our staffing. Any questions on the operating or capital budgets?
Thank you. That was great. I feel like that was really informative and thoughtful. I just have a quick question. 6.42, if we were to take out the .32 that has now joined our budget, right, for the
So,
Yep. So that would actually be a 6.12% increase. correct?
6.1.
6.1, that's right. Okay, just wanted to clarify that that was also included
Yes.
in that increase.
Yep.
You mentioned that the insurance has gone way up. Are the teachers taking on any of that cost?
Well, they have a premium share that they pay.
Right, is that going to go up for them as well?
Yeah, no doubt.
So that will change these figures, I would assume.
No.
So you're saying there's an increase in cost of insurance, and you gave it to us.
Yep.
And you're also saying that they will take some.
Teachers will have to pay more out of pocket.
Well, then that will lower that, won't it?
No, that will go directly to the.
That's just the board's increase.
So what we've shared is the board's increase. They will be paying money directly to Anthem.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sherry, in their contract, we have negotiated what those increases will be each year. So that has already been negotiated, the percentage of an increase. I can't remember off the top of my head what their percentage is, but over those 3 years, we negotiated that back, a couple of years ago. So that percentage also increases. That's still a percentage of what the insurance company is still costing.
I see. And that's until 2026.
Their contract?
There's all different contracts.
I can't remember off the top of my head. what
Yeah,
the
and they're
teacher's
all
contract
different.
is. So
There's the teacher's contract.
Right,
there's their
that's-
educator contract, custodial contract. So even amongst those contracts, they're not all paying the same cost share.
I see.
And they all end at different years.
Not all of them, but we did try to work it so that we didn't have 5 bargaining units ending on the same time.
Is this the discussion time before we vote on accepting this budget?
This is the perfect time for you to ask questions.
Okay.
And then if there is a motion later, then we have further discussion. This is a question period for clarification.
Okay. All right. I know that we were asked to vote for small, or to keep our class sizes small. And there was some discussion about the little kids and how they, we need to keep the classes small. I thought at the time that's what we were voting on. Since then, I've learned that we have many, many classes in the middle school and in the high school that are absolutely tiny. Now, in the elementary school, K through 4, the class sizes are between 18 and 20, and I think that's probably a very good number. And I would not want to see those class sizes increase. However, in the middle school, and especially the high school, where we have kids that are a lot older, especially those kids going on to college, are going to be exposed to lectures containing 150 kids. We're giving them teeny tiny classes, and I don't understand, because the cost of teachers or faculty is our biggest expense. For example, I spent a lot of time on the district class size report about enrollment and class size. I spent a lot of time consolidating that. And I would like to take, I guess it's going to take me 2 minutes maybe to read through my results. In the high school.
I just want to be clear about what your question is, because.
My question is, I want to say what we have, and then I'm going to ask why do we have this, according to this report.
Right, so we all know what the classes are. We've all seen that report. So I think the question is, why is it that way? I don't
No, that's not quite the question, because I don't know if everybody here took the time. It took me probably 3 hours to go through this report and consolidate it. And that's when it was an eye-opener for me. I would like to spend 2 minutes, you can time me if you want, to go through as much information I have. Cut me off at 2 minutes then.
Take the 2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay, in our high school, I'll skip over the middle school. They're a little bit younger, but the class sizes are similar. in the high school, we have 3 classes with just 2 students. We have 1 class with 3 students.
Sherry, do you know which classes those are?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And they're in here.
Right. So I think if you're going to present us with data, you also have to say which class it is, because that helps inform the decision, the response.
Some of these classes are English. A lot of them are the English with the graphic novels. Some of them are math. It's across the board, including some music classes.
Okay.
Okay, it covers pretty much all.
Good.
Now, while I do understand we're locked in with special ed teachers, with the number of students we have, these are the other classes, okay? Because we have instructional aides that also help special ed. Okay, getting back to what I wanted to share, we have 1 class with 5 students, 7 classes with 6 students. These are high school classes. 6 classes with 7 students, 10 classes with only 8 students, 16 classes with only 9 students, 13 classes with only 10 students, 20 classes with only 11, 13 classes with only 12, 17 classes with only 13, 12 classes with only 14, and finally, 12 classes with only 15 students. If our biggest expense is faculty, these classes are not all special ed classes. These are the regular classes that all the students in the high school are taking. How can we afford this, and why are we going to even consider this is something we're going to build from with an increase in our budget?
Would you like to speak to this?
Sure. So I guess I do have a question for the board to consider. Like, this sounds like it would be a great topic, and I know that you've been very proactive about trying to schedule climate, culture, and enrollment subcommittee meetings where we could have our building level principals provide you with at least a reasoning to the complexities of developing a high school schedule to meet graduation requirements, while also offering a robust program of studies that will allow some of our students to take very specialized courses that make our district attractive. I don't know that I can give you an answer about all the data. You're right. We have small class sizes. We also have ones that are 30 or more.
Can we afford it, is my question. Can we afford this?
That's up to you as a Board of Ed member to look at the proposal and say, no, I don't think that we can afford it. I'd like you to cut how many more teachers?
I'd like to see the classes increase in size from 4,
So
3,
the other thing I was going to
7.
say, Sherry, yeah, I hear you. And I appreciate you being vulnerable and not having a full understanding of what it takes to put together a high school schedule with all the number of periods that they have, all the number of classes that need to be offered, all the different sections. I admit I can't do it either. But that's why I'd love to pull in our principals and they can tell you how this happens. There's a lot of those classes that you referenced where students sign up with the intent to take one class and then they drop. So those classes when they were established could have been 15 and now they're 10. There's a lot of questions that I don't think in a 5-minute discussion on the night that a Board of Ed budget was proposed, I could give you those answers. And that's just an honest answer. I feel like we would need a meeting and meetings to give you answers to all those.
Do you feel that this is significant enough to take a look at in order to entertain the idea of trimming our budget, if this is what we have?
Yeah, I think that is one really nice data point that played into why I proposed to cut 6 full-time equivalent staff members.
Well, that's a little bit of a help, I will admit, but I think it's a much bigger priority to consider.
I appreciate your opinion.
I saw Sarah and then Dawn.
I don't know if it's the appropriate time to say this, but I would also ask, can we afford to not offer our students the same opportunity or something similar to a course selection that is appropriate to meet their needs and their interests I want just a minute, if you don't mind. For example, my son graduated a few years ago, and the math department at this school was rocking it. Got 6 kids to take Calc B. For the first time, they were able to run Calc B. Do we not want our kids in Lebanon to have that opportunity? Because it would set them up for post-high school success. If that is their interest, that is what they're good at. We're saying, some members of the community are saying we're 40th. How are we going to advance if we're not giving them the opportunity and the instruction to take the same classes that are offered in other districts? Yes, some of our classes are going to have 6. Some independent studies are going to have 2. But why do our students not deserve it? They deserve it. And as a teacher or as a parent, if my child excels at math, I'd like him to have that opportunity to take that class. And I don't want to have to move for him to have that opportunity.
I am all for.
Dawn was waiting.
All right.
Oh, I have a question about electives. Are those half-year courses?
Jay, do you want to pipe in?
Electives can be half-year courses. Some of them are full-year courses. Like personal finance, business. Those are electives. Those are half-year course. I'm trying to find one. Turf management in our ag department that non-ag students can take. That's a full-year course, but that's an elective. It varies.
So I'm talking kind of like, say, the technical writing course, and then say, is that a half-year elective?
That was going to be, yeah.
Oh, so can they merge courses and make one teacher teach a whole year? Like two semesters?
That teacher would do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just maybe a little bit of an explanation, like what Andy, I appreciate you said about scheduling. It's a nightmare. I've been in other districts, they say the same thing. So while you might have a class of 3, you might also have a class of 30, like you said. I was reminded that we have some courses that have restrictions on how many can take it, like maxed out at 10 people because of equipment, like the drone course or the CNA course. Those classes have limits. You can't have more than 10 in a class. So just another example of that. I don't think it's a perfect situation, of course. You'd want to have at least 10 people in every class, I would think. And I would hate to be in the class of 3 because it's like the 3 of us staring at each other the whole year. But I'd also hate to be in the class of 30 because you never get a chance to say anything. So I don't know, there is no perfect answer to how to fix scheduling, but I think that's just a little bit of another explanation of why there's such a large discrepancy in numbers.
And that's why I was asking about which course, because we know that some of them have to be maxed at a low number because of the reasons why she just said. And the way that I've always understood it is, you mentioned like for the younger kids, it's like 18 to 24. And that's 1-to-1.
20.
18 to 20, thank you. And that's one teacher and maybe some pairs, but with that class. To compare it to the high school, you have to compare it across the schedule. And so I, as a teacher, might have one class that's 8 and might have another class that's 30. And so my average would be similar, like if I just average it out through the day. And so it's based within an entire department, not specific classes.
I didn't see any classes of 30, and I have no problem with students that excel in math or have a specialty for drones, and we only have so much equipment. What I'm very concerned about is we have over 15 teeny tiny classes. Can we do better than that
That's
for
why
one period?
Right, and that's why I was asking which class it was, because if it's an independent study, that might be different. And again, that same teacher might, okay. I don't think that you're going to care about anything that I'm sharing about my experience on my time on the board. Again, that's why I was asking which classes you're pointing out, because we can't respond without full information.
I can come to a special meeting or the next meeting with that information if you really care about that.
I also know the information, so I
don't know if it would be helpful I said this during the presentation when we were looking at other district increases, that it's about Lebanon. But it might be good insight for you if we were to pull 4 or 5 other districts that have high schools that have similar course offerings to say, do you have some small class sizes and then at the same time have big ones? I think that we might be able to work, Mr. Apicelli, with other district principals. Again, it is a little late in the game for this type of questioning and conversations. You know, the district class size report was provided, I think, months ago now. You know, so I would just encourage the board. I'll do whatever I can to try to track down information and to set up presentations and to make you feel completely supported when you have to make difficult. I can understand why you're feeling somewhat conflicted with what you're seeing with the numbers and knowing that staffing is such a significant part of the budget, but I'd love to be able to give you the amount of time that is needed to get you those answers. You still may not agree. That's part of the process, but I don't feel like I can give you those answers now.
Well, I did try to attend the finance meeting maybe a couple of weeks ago and was told that I was not allowed to speak because I'm not on that committee.
That is how subcommittees work.
Right, so you've got a committee of 3 or 4 people determining what our budget is. And then you bring it here, and this is the only time we can talk about it.
That is how subcommittees work. So anybody who is on the subcommittee has been charged with doing that preliminary work for the board, and then they make recommendations to the board. And the board is, every board member is welcome to come and listen, but the subcommittee members were charged with it. And so then when it comes to the full board, because they may hear it and say, absolutely not, don't even think about bringing that to the full board. And so that's why we have them flesh it out at that level, and then it comes to the full board, just like facilities, just like any committee. And this is the time that the full board talks about the recommendation that was already fleshed out from the subcommittee.
Right. From about what? How many people are on that committee? 3. Okay, so from 3 people.
Okay, I've seen Rachel, and I know Brian has been reading as well.
4, okay.
4 to 9.
Well, this is the first chance I've been able to talk about it. And we're supposed to vote on it. And I'm still not getting the information I need. And the way I feel right now is I will vote no and say, let's send it back and see what we can trim, especially with so many little tiny teeny classes.
I'm Rachel, but I know that he wants
Well,
to.
maybe I could just go quickly, and it might not be a great comparison, but you know, think about the people in our town. They get to come to the town meeting once and take in all of the information from small groups of people on the Board of Ed and the Board of Finance who make decisions about the entire community. It's not a perfectly inclusive process, you know. So we're trying the best we can through the structures that we have in our subcommittees to have them bring you routine updates every month that they meet for you to be able to digest that information. I feel that I've made myself completely available to any Board of Ed member who's ever had a question and would track down that information if I didn't know the answer off the top of my head. So I feel like we do have the systems and structures to get you the information. And I'm sorry that you're feeling the way you are now, but to your point, ultimately it is your decision to vote yes or no.
I just don't feel I have enough information to vote a yes.
Rachel.
I just want to, I think Dawn and Danelle was also saying this, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but when a teacher has a class, one period of 5 students, the next period they may have 30 students, right? So just by cutting one teacher, it's not like that one teacher is teaching one class of 5 students all day, you know.
That's not what I noticed.
I
didn't see any classes of
and I'm not trying to change the subject, but I have a question. We talked about having 101 students come in from out of district, right? Do we have a number of what that revenue is, and that goes directly to the town?
Yeah, so we did talk at the subcommittee about some slides that had been in previous years that I chose to take out for the purpose of this meeting. you all knowing what our revenue generating figure is does nothing for our operating budget. So we bring in, let's call it $1.3 million of tuition revenue. That does not impact our operating budget at all. It's a great figure to be able to share and celebrate that we have a diverse student population from many sending towns. And on top of that diversity that's brought into our community, we benefit by bringing in $1.3 million to return to the town. That is a great highlight, but we don't see that. So for me to present that to you, I didn't find it to be helpful.
That money is returned to the town?
Yes.
The Board of Finance?
The town.
The town.
Not the Board of Finance.
I just want to say one more thing, and.
Brian, were you?
Brian was next.
Okay.
So this is, and Sherry, thank you for, taking the time and digging in, that's great. It's always good when we can get a little more in there and learn more than we knew yesterday. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
My comment, though, is, across a couple of lines. And it's interesting to me, tonight has been interesting to me. It's interesting that many folks that spoke earlier spoke about a budget amount that it appears that they already knew what it was, what we were going to be proposing tonight. And that's curious to me because it was only included in internal DOE emails up front. So that's curious. But I'll move on from that for a sec. I agree that there should be, some sort of, parity with class size. That there, maybe there should be some sort of, analysis, or to use the term, the current federal term buzzword, right size of, class sizes. I know, and this isn't, you talk about high school kids, and you talk about universities and large halls and stuff like that as far as them taking their courses. I can tell you from my experience, they won't have me teach a course if I don't have at least 8 students. 8 is their drop dead. It's probably their profitability matrix where, they can make a few bucks and still, pay Brian his, pittance so he can, put gas in the lawnmower or whatever. So, but maybe there is that, there likely is that ability to try to come to a better understanding of that. Again, I don't, at this point in time where we're at in the process, and because this information has been out for so long, I think that, again, as Andy pointed out, you've got to vote your conscience on what you think is certainly right. And, one last thing, and it's about your comment, so please don't take it personally. It's not about Sherry, it's about the comment. When you mentioned about, well, how many people are on that finance subcommittee? And said, well, 4. Well, those 4 are the ones that are, pushing forward for the rest of the board, really. They're going to bring their recommendation. And yeah, that's absolutely true. But I have to tell you, as someone that has worked, I think, pretty hard since being on the board on many different budget lines, it's offensive to me that you think that you've got a better idea than the other 4 of us. Now, maybe you've got different ideas, but that's part of my same argument that really bothers me in Lebanon, that it's always the us against them mentality. It's this, it always seems like it's pitted as like the Board of Ed versus the Board of Finance or something like that. And I really, to me, it's not like that at all. You take the best information you have, and then you make a decision with it. So So for that, I say thank you, ma'am.
I have one more thing I'd like to say. Part of my perception here is the fact that I taught for 37 years in a middle school, and for 10 years of those 37, I had 30 kids in every one of my 5 classes, for a total of 150 kids I would see every day, all week. It was a blessing when we would have years where we had 20 or 22. We were in heaven. We were dancing. So, from my perspective, I hope you understand that I find these teeny tiny classes shocking, especially when it reflects on the exorbitant cost for our faculty. Isn't there a better way we can do this? Can we go back and trim? I mean, nobody's happy with all the money that's being spent. I'm sure even Andy would love to bring it down lower. Nobody's thrilled that we're spending millions, and we seem to be increasing by $1 million every year. Why not say, let's go back and see what else we can trim? This is, I know we can't do anything with special ed. We have mandates. But these teeny tiny classes, I think, deserve a second look.
Okay. With all due respect, Sherry, you were in the classroom 10 years ago. You have no idea how it's changed from 10 years ago. Okay? It's a very different population of kids. I'm not saying that your information is inaccurate, but I highly suggest that you probably should have a conversation with Mr. Apicelli about the makeup of this high school. Because those small class sizes, there's a reason behind them. And there are class sizes of over 20 at Lyman. So your information does not seem like it's accurate. But the landscape of education has changed greatly since you retired. And those needs need to be met, because in one classroom, you will find 5 different reading levels. How is one teacher going to address all those different reading levels and their social emotional needs if their class sizes are not small enough? Because in my class size of 25, I know I'm not reaching all those kids.
Any other questions for Andy?
Are we voting tonight on this, or are we voting next week?
We have an agenda item. We'll get there. An action item. Okay. Moving on to the finance report. The first, under the finance report 2024-2025 budget, in case you're following along in your packet, it starts on page 42.
Hey, Martha.
Hi, Martha.
I have nothing to add to the report that's been presented on the 24-25 budget.
I apologize, it starts on page 43. Any questions?
So far, Martha, we're holding our own on special ed. I mean, I know that based on your projections,
We're still
usually around 37.72% remaining. We're at 37.65, so we're right on track.
for the most part, but we are still looking at the special ed. I mean, it's going to be close.
Okay.
It's going to be very close.
Awesome. No, that was my question on that.
Yeah.
Driver. Thanks.
And we still have a hard freeze on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions? Non-lapsing.
Currently, the projected balance with open projects is $71,722.07. One of the remaining open projects that had already been approved is the lens project, additional sensors. There's been work with the company to get the items ordered and get them installed, and hopefully that'll be done soon. And, you know, the money that was approved from non-lapsing only covers the town's portion, the Board of Ed's portion. The rest of it is grant funded.
Yeah, and just a reminder to you all, LENS is the Lockdown Emergency Notification System, and working with Eastern Datacom, they gave us a proposal that was everything that they thought our buildings needed to be fully equipped in their best estimation as experts in the security field. We were not able to move forward with it because it was well above the amount that we were going to get from the state as part of the grant. So we only ordered what we could through the grant and then provided our matching funds. And then we got communication from the state to say, oh, we found more money, here you go. So then we had to call Eastern Datacom back out, and what Martha is referencing is right now we have the audible lockdown notification that is triggered either through the panic button or on the app or from teacher phones in the classroom, but we don't really have much visual at all. So we would want to bolster our ability to know that we are in that type of situation by having visuals as well. So that this would be like similar to sirens on the top of a police car. This would be those blares that we would get.
Just one other, it's a comment. One of the things in the budget proposal meetings that we had statewide this week, all the chatter, after the governor proposed his budget last week, there is no additional funding for HVAC or security that will likely be put forth on the state side. So, at this point anyway, of course, the legislature's still got many more months to do whatever it is that they do.
Any other questions or comments on non-lapsing? Food service.
So recently, our food service program went through administrative review. It's where a member of the state child nutrition program comes out and does a very hard, deep dive look into absolutely every little element there is of our school nutrition program. There were mandatory webinars that myself and the food service director, Keith Barnes, had to attend. It was copious hours of the two of us scrambling, working together to make sure that everything was up to snuff. In the selected school, they chose the middle school to do their on-site review. So we spent a lot of time going through, what we were learning in those webinars and making sure that everything was handled, every I was dotted, every T was crossed. We came away with that with 5 findings, 2 of which revolve around something that was discussed at the policy subcommittee meeting earlier, our wellness policy. We need to do some work there. That was 2 of the findings surrounded that. One of them had to do with policy up to date because there was some language that was missing and the inactiveness of a wellness committee. So we're working on those. A couple of the other ones were very minor. A student actually took extra fruit at one lunch, and we didn't have a policy on how to address if a student takes more than what they should be taking. So I've had to just come up with a policy on, what our food service staff should do if a student takes more than the 5 components that are part of a reimbursable meal. So that was, an insignificant finding. One of the other findings had to do with some of the ice cream we were selling. It meets the Smart Snack standards, but it doesn't meet the Healthy Food Certification standards. So even though it was on an approved list with the vendor we were ordering it from, it was not on the right approved list. So we have remedied that situation by removing the product and ordering the less desirable selection that the students are buying, but not as happily. So, we've already addressed that one, and that's the basis of our findings. Also surrounding our food service program, we have federal funds that were given to us to allow us to partner with local farms. It's a way to get more local farm produce, vegetables, other types of things into our lunch programs and make them offerings. The state got grant money where they were able to hire, I think it was 4 or 5 specialists through UConn who have been each assigned a region of the state. Our person is Rebecca Fahey. Keith and I spoke to Rebecca earlier this week, and, you know, she gave us some great insight on some areas to reach out to, some other farms that we were not aware of, or some partnerships that we were not aware of, one of which is a collaborative called Healthy Plan Eat. This lady has put together basically it's almost like a food hub, but she doesn't house the food. The farmers actually keep possession of their own items, but she maintains a website where they can post what's available. And as a school district, we can go on, we can make purchases, the farm will deliver directly to us, and then we pay them, and then we get reimbursed from the federal government. Right now, the federal grant is 100% match, so whatever we spend, we get 100% back. There's also a program through the state, which is only a 50% match. The one through the state is not as time sensitive. The one through the federal program, we have to spend the money by April 30th or June 30th. They're still fighting over that deadline right now. So we're doing everything we can to try and get this money spent. We've already have connected with Healthy Plan Eat, and, you know, we'll be setting them in order hopefully the week of the 24th. We don't want to do anything next week because of the school break. And we're also working with Maple Lane Farms to take advantage of the hydroponic lettuce that they grow. Obviously, this is not the growing season right now, so, you know, we can do future contracting with a farm, and that's something we're looking into. So if we make a commitment with a local farm, say we want to purchase corn for next school year, we can make a local commitment with a local farm, get a contract in place. We actually pay them to grow the corn for us. So that is something else we're looking into. But we are trying to come up with ideas. And because of the food nutrition restrictions, whatever we buy, we have to make sure there's recipes that are approved that go along with the preparation of this food and the serving of this food, so that it meets all the federal and state requirements that we have to meet. So it's not as easy as going to your local farmer, bringing in some apples and saying, here you go, which we do. We have used some local nurseries and our farmers and had apples. We did some highlights. Each school had a day where some vendors came in, some farmers came in and actually interacted with the kids, and the kids got to ask them some great questions during lunchtime. So we do have some programs like that going on. So a lot of stuff happening in the food service world.
Thanks, Martha.
Thank you so much.
Martha, maybe the farmers can grow some really yummy ice cream.
Yes, that would be wonderful, but I don't know if they could, because it, can't have anything in it, It can't taste good.
Yeah, I know it can't taste good. Ice cream's a food group.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We are moving on to our action items. First action item is to act on the letter of retirement. Is there a motion?
Motion to act on letter of retirement with regret.
Second.
All right, no. Motion by Nicole, seconded by Danelle. All those in favor? Just raise your hand. That is unanimous. Next, we have act on the letter of resignation. Is there a motion?
Motion to act on letters of resignation.
Motion by Nicole, seconded by
Second.
Sarah. All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Next is to act on the new course book, Health Now, an integrated approach to personal health. Is there a motion?
I move that we accept the purchase of the Health Now and integrative approach, sorry, it's not for the purchase. Approve the course book. I move that we approve the course book, Health Now, an integrative approach to personal health.
Second.
Motion by Danelle, seconded by Nicole. Is there any discussion? Yes.
So I don't know about this class. Is this a new class, or is this just a new book for a class that we already have?
It's a course that we already approved. This is the book that we would get for it. And having a course approved does not mean it's necessarily going to run. Just to,
And having a new course doesn't mean new staff.
I was gonna ask that.
Yeah.
I believe this is the early college experience.
Yeah, through
course.
UConn.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is Sarah, Nicole, Brian, Don W., Danelle, Alexis, Rachel, and Sherry. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Opposed by Dawn. Okay. Next, act on, that passes. Act on a new course book, writing that works, communicative, did I write that right? Communicative, effective, on the job. Communicating effectively?
Yes, it is communicating.
I was like, that's funny. I copied and pasted it too. Communicating effectively on the job. Is there a motion?
Any discussion?
Motion to
We have the motion first, yeah.
I move that we accept the book Writing That Works, Communicating Effectively on the Job.
Second. Sorry.
Second by Sarah. Okay. Discussion.
Is this going to be a separate course?
This is for the course we approved already for business and technical writing. This is the book for it.
Any comments? Remember, it's a two-part process because once the course is approved, then we have to get the recommendation of the book, or it might come at the same time, but it has to go to the library for a certain period of time. So that's why you're seeing that like at a separate time than when the course is approved, or if these two just happen to be that the courses were approved within the last several months versus an update that we've had within the last year. Any other comments? Questions? All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is Sarah, Nicole, Brian, Dawn W., Danelle, Alexis, Rachel, and Sherry. All those opposed? One job. Thank you. Motion passes. Next, we have act on the 2025-2026 operating budget. In order to discuss, we need a motion.
Motion to approve the 2025-26 operating budget.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second. May I just ask, clarify the motion as presented by the superintendent?
Motion to approve the 2025-26 operating budget at 6.42% increase.
And I'll second that amendment.
Thank you. Motion by Nicole, seconded by Sarah. Discussion. Okay.
So this means that we're not going to take, if we vote this through, that would mean we would not take a second look at it and try to trim?
If this motion passes as it is, it would move forward to be sent along. If it failed, then we would have to go back. We also scheduled a potential, or had to save the date of a potential next meeting. So if board members feel not ready, then someone can make a motion to postpone to a certain date. Those are the options. Yeah.
Sorry, Brian.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
We just need to be mindful of the timeline for the presentation to the Board of Finance.
Right, but since there's a motion on the floor already, that would have to be voted on first.
No, a motion to postpone can occur.
Simultaneously?
Yes, the motion is to postpone the decision until a specific date. And, well, a table,
Well, that's
you
true.
have to
Yeah,
vote
yeah,
to
you're
take it
right.
off the table,
You're
so
right.
postpone would be more accurate. Yes.
So my inclination is that, with the discussion and the extensive, updates that the superintendent has done to the presentation, and my personal preference, my personal taste would be to give everybody a few extra days to think about it and postpone it until a later date is set by the board, but that's Brian's 2 cents.
Would you like to make a motion to postpone?
I would like to make a motion to postpone.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Second it.
We need the full motion.
You guys can't do that. You got a motion on the floor, you got to vote on it. And then you can make your motion. You can't, two motions on the floor don't work.
Thank you for that input.
Thanks, you're out of order though, Ellen.
So
Can't sit
the
here and
motion-
watch it though.
The
That was
motion
my
is on the,
question. That was my question.
excuse me. Believe me, I prepared for this meeting. Please trust me that I know this process. The motion on the floor can be then moved. The motion is to postpone to February 18th at 5 p.m. That's when we're holding the date. That's when we will call the meeting. The motion is to postpone the decision.
Discussion?
Once we get back, then, once we enter into that meeting, we immediately are able to talk about the motion on the floor.
Is that the motion?
The motion is from Brian to postpone the decision to February 18th at 5 p.m. at a special board meeting.
I'll second it.
Give me 1 second. Okay. Give me 1 second.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
We need a 2/3 vote to postpone?
Majority.
Okay.
And so now the motion on the floor is to postpone. The discussion right now is about the motion on the floor to postpone, not the main motion.
Part of the discussion, I would like to say that I think Andy, I think you did a great job presenting. This is probably the best I've ever followed a presentation and the core things that are important for making a decision. Yet it's a high percentage, and so I feel like I'm not the only one.
The conversation to postpone.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So because of that feeling I have, I want to dive a little bit deeper myself.
Mm-hmm.
So giving me a week now that I've seen the full presentation, I've seen the numbers, I know the mandates, I hear the concerns, I would like to have a week to look at it further. And I think, maybe I'll speak for other people, I think there's other people in that kind of a situation where you feel very caught between, it's a lot of money, but this is what we have. And I think the numbers are transparent, and it's like, there's not a whole lot I can do, but maybe there's a little bit I can do.
So you support?
I support postponing the meeting.
Other comments for postponing?
If we postpone the meeting, would there be any time to get together and try to trim?
The
Put
motion
our
on,
heads together and discuss it
the
further.
motion on the floor is to postpone the decision to the February 18th special board meeting. That's the motion on the floor.
Would we have discussion on that date?
Theoretically, after the 18th, there could be another meeting.
But at the meeting at the 18th, would there be discussion available?
The discussion would be on the main motion, which is to approve the 2025-2026 at 6.2%.
So you can say what you're against that budget for, and then if it's not approved, we would then have to go to another meeting.
I guess I'm not making myself clear, but at the 18th, would we have time? We have a week. Maybe you find something, someone else finds something, I find something. Would we have time to share that information on the 18th?
We can
As a
discuss.
discussion.
We can discuss the motion, and at that point, you would still have to make a decision on that particular motion.
Right, we wouldn't be able to change the budget that night, but you can discuss it that night, and you could state what you would like changed or what you don't like about the budget. Then that night, we have to vote on the budget, yes or no.
Okay.
That the budget as presented, yes or no.
But we'd all have a week to kind of digest everything.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Again, the motion on the floor is to postpone to February 18th, 5 p.m. Postpone the decision. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is Dawn J, Nicole, Brian, Dawn W, Danelle.
My hand's not raised.
Oh, it's not? I'm sorry. It is not Nicole. Please strike that. I'm sorry. Danelle, Rachel, and Sherry. All those opposed? Opposed is Sarah, Nicole, and Alexis. The motion passes. Next, act on 2025-2026 capital budget.
Motion to approve the 2025-26 capital budget as presented.
There is a motion on the floor.
Second.
Seconded by Sarah. Discussion. As a reminder.
Should we clarify?
Yeah, yes. I just, before we clarify, let me just give like a bit of history to everybody. At the last meeting, we passed a motion, we passed a decision that approved the capital budget at a certain amount that I'm not seeing in front of me right now, I apologize. It broke it down, facilities was $162,759, IT was $65,000, and athletics was $30,000. We acted on information that we had at the time. We now have updated information, which changes not athletics or IT, that stays at $30,000 and $65,000 respectively. It increases facilities to $628,599 because it includes the addition of the track. So the total amount now that would be presented is $723,599. And the breakdown is facilities, $628,599, IT, $65,000, and athletics, $30,000.
You want the complete number, the 700,000?
I think it's been presented, and so the minutes can reflect it that way. So if you want to keep the motion as presented, it'll show in the minutes. So the motion is by Sarah, Nicole, seconded by Sarah. You have the numbers, and I'm happy to repeat if anybody would like. Discussion. Sarah, and then Brian.
Just to remind everybody how the track ended up here. We did have it on the town surplus ask, but we didn't have the appropriate information at that time, so it got off of the list. Understandably, we didn't have an accurate figure then. My understanding is, or my guess is, that we, talked with the selectmen about this and popped it back. Is that how we ended up popping it back on the capital?
Yes.
Okay.
I mentioned it in the finance subcommittee, and again, this is just my opinion. The track absolutely needs done. The track is integral to sports in Lyman. The track is integral to this town. There's a lot of folks that use it well beyond the kids, so to speak. That said, given a choice between the 470-ish for the track, 1,000, and other cuts, I personally can't put through that additional amount. So that's just Brian's.
Because you don't support it being in.
I don't support that additional funding. I would originally, if we would have had another avenue at it, but I just adding that to an already tight budget year is just going to put me over the top. So I'm fine with what we originally passed, but that was a little too much for me.
Danelle and then Sherry.
I have a question. When the SLAM study was done, were the athletic facilities looked at? Because the track would have been included, so
athletics aren't only things that are part of reimbursables. So 9.8 out of 10 times, the state doesn't pay for auditoriums, athletic facilities, stuff like that. Now, districts have gotten special dispensation from the legislature at points in time, I guess, but that is not something that the Office of Grants Administration is part of the cost share. So no, it was not.
Sure.
At a previous meeting, I asked, since other schools do use our track, whether we charge them. They use our track because they do not have tracks. That was my understanding. And at that time, I also understood that we do not charge them, that we are incurring the whole cost ourselves, even though other schools depend on us to have a track. And if I remember correctly, it was part of, good policy or getting along and sharing and that sort of thing.
Can you let Andy clarify that? Do you mind?
So that is not a regular practice. There have been times in which other districts either had tracks that were under repair themselves or had other school-based projects that rendered their facility unusable, and we allowed them to join our practice time. That is not a common practice. We did do that graciously and would hope that if we have to do our track in the middle of the spring, that they would do the same. So it was more a one-off type of thing.
So there is no option to charge at all?
No.
To help incur the cost?
There's not really anyone to charge.
Yeah,
There's nobody to charge.
we don't have a standing practice of, let's say, Colchester comes and uses our track, so we don't have anybody to charge.
Just if the occasion arises, we do offer it though.
We have helped before, sure.
I'm not sure where the money's gonna come from. I don't know where to ask for the money. But my fear is if you don't fix the track and it becomes something that is unusable, we'll have to be busing our athletes out of town to use other tracks, and there's quite an expense of transportation. Every single day for practice, every single time they have a meet. There's about, I think the average is like 50 kids on the track team in the spring. So you'd need a full bus each time that you bring them elsewhere.
And the middle school uses it as well.
Right.
It's probably
The middle school uses it too. Yep.
Alexis.
I agree with Brian. It's a very large amount. However, it's a capital request. And I think our job as a board is to put forth the need. The track is a need, and I think that it should be here so we don't lose sight of it. If we don't get it, then there are other people who will make that decision. My purpose is to bring forth the needs, and it is a request that this district needs. So I would support this increase.
Nicole and then Sarah.
I also believe that there are quite a lot of kids that are part of our track program, and I would hate to see that the track is not repaired for many years, and we have quite a few kids that are state champions. So to hinder their opportunity to get some sort of a scholarship to a college of their choice because we do not have a track program here, because we don't have a track, that would be a serious injustice to our students.
Thank you. Sarah.
I believe we were told that we had one usable year left. One usable year. This is it. We ask for it. We don't get it. At least we asked for it. One more year. I mean, we need to ask for this. If we cannot offer a track for our kids to run on, not only Lebanon Middle School, Lyman, these kids use this in PE, guys.
I say it's a class as well.
It's a class. We have to have a track. I don't understand why I do understand the financial need. We asked for it. The Board of Selectmen asked for us to put it back on the list. We need to ask for it. our kids are not gonna have it. We're just, I definitely see a theme tonight. It's just cut, 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 cut. Not meet the needs. It seems like we don't care. That's what it's looking like, and I'm sorry that this is coming into you know, the capital budget, but it's definitely a theme. 1 year, that's all we have.
I just want to say, I did also want to point out that the middle school uses it, and the number of students and classes that use the track. But yes, we did originally think that it was going to be covered under surplus funds from the town. And when we reached out to them, the superintendent reached out to them and asked, you know, what the status of that was, we were told to go through the right process and put it back in our budget. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're requesting to do tonight.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. That is Sarah, Nicole, Dawn W., Danelle, Alexis, and Rachel, and Sherry. All those opposed, please raise your hand. That is Dawn J., Brian. That's it. Motion passes. We move on to the anticipated executive session. Is there a motion?
Motion to move into the executive session for the purpose of discussing superintendent's mid-year evaluation.
Motion by Nicole, seconded by Brian. Nope. Just very. All those in favor, please raise your hand.